welcome back to Light the Fuse. Lighting fuses pretty much on a weekly basis at this point.
Yeah.
For the past year and a half.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while.
Woo! Do you think we would get this far?
No, I really didn't.
When do you think we would peter out?
I thought we would do it until the Mission Impossible Fallout digital release.
Okay.
That would be our last.
That's
hurrah.
when we were just getting going.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, because I think early on, if you listen to our early episodes, we're like, yeah, hopefully we'll have a guest or two. And now it's completely a guest-driven show.
Yeah, which is great, I think.
Yes. Although I think soon we should do... We're going to do a couple solo episodes, just us. We're going to talk about the old show, a couple of the best episodes from the old show, and we'll do one about video games, which people keep asking us about video games. And so we'll do that too. And comic books too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'll get some, but for the most part, we're guest-driven now at this point.
Yes. Yes.
Because we get so many great guests. It's been a pleasure to talk to these people.
Are you complaining?
No, I'm loving it.
Okay.
It's fun.
Yeah.
We love doing this.
We do.
And it's a chance to hang out with you.
Yeah.
You're my friend.
Yeah, as you are my friend as well. Yeah. Well, now you're closer, so now I feel like we will be seeing each other socially more often. Although you have a child.
Yes. But you could come over and say hi to the child.
I could. Yeah, you're very close. But really, we're not here to talk about us.
No.
We're here to talk about Paul Hirsch.
Paul Hirsch, legend.
Genius editor, has worked on so many amazing movies, and has just written the most amazing memoir, which I loved.
Yes.
Called A Long Time Ago in a Cutting Room Far, Far Away.
Yes.
Maybe should have edited the title of the book.
It's a great title.
Okay.
It lets people know that he edited both the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And he has so many great stories about that, which we didn't even get to ask him about much.
No, well, I thought that those things are covered pretty well.
Yes.
I feel like we were kind of filling holes that we wanted to hear more about.
Well, in our initial interview earlier this year when we talked to Paul Hirsch, we did a whole episode where we were basically grilling him on Star Wars stuff.
Yes.
And what's funny is that he has so many stories to tell, even when he touches on something that we've asked him before or something from the book. He still illuminates other sides of the story. He always has other details that you wouldn't expect and new angles on it. And he's a wonderful guest.
And it's not someone who wants to take credit for anything that he wasn't responsible for, which I love. He always sort of like tells it like it is, how he was brought into Star Wars, what his contributions were, who else contributed, because there were two other editors who won Oscars.
That was a question I had at least another dozen or two questions that we didn't even get into at all. One of the questions I wanted to ask him that we didn't was Marsha Lucas.
Where is she?
What happened? Does he stay in touch with her, and does she still? She never edited after that. She, I think raised the family in the 80s, but she was a legendary editor herself.
Yes. And many people say that she is sort of the unsung hero of Star Wars.
Of the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, this time we kind of this episode is really a lot about planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah,
and Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, some fascinating stuff about planes, trains.
Yes.
I don't know if these deleted scenes that he goes into have been shown anywhere
No,
before,
I don't think so.
But he talks a lot about some hilarious scenes.
Yeah, we were dying laughing just hearing him recount these scenes.
Yeah. And then also about stuff from Ferris Bueller that's great too, and things that were.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes into it in the book, but this interview he even elaborates more on things that are not in the book. So it's just, it's a great interview. Hope you enjoy it.
Yes, and we'll be back afterwards to wrap things up. But let's just throw it over. Get ready for Kevin's legally damnable rip-off music, and we'll be back afterwards.
It's an illegal loving homage. That's what we decided, right?
Yes.
So enjoy that.
Yes, and we'll be back afterwards.
Well, I love the method that you said that George Lucas does, which is for the first cut, he watches it all the way through and then immediately watches it again, and that's when he takes notes.
Yeah. Morning screening, lunch, and then go back and watch it again.
I love that. I'm totally stealing that for anything that ever I do. Every time I watch the first cut of anything I've done, I'm not taking notes. I'm mostly just like covering my eyes and in pain because I'm just like, this is terrible. This is terrible. And I'm going to now be more open to just watching it as the first experience of seeing it as a whole. I think is a really great thing to do and try to not beat myself up so much while it's happening.
Well, you can remember the things that you say, this is terrible, and go back and address them later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's that. Yeah, they're etched in my brain for sure.
Yeah, so
I think that's why I usually start thinking I'm going to take notes, and then as I get in, I get so overwhelmed with so much stuff. I'm just like, I say, don't just watch. But now I'm just going to go into it with that.
Yeah,
attitude.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get plenty of chances to see it again.
Yeah, it's so true.
And you only get one opportunity to see it for the first time.
Right. Yeah.
It's very important.
It's funny that you said, well, this happened in so many movies that you have done, but like technical issues always come up. And even, it sounds like the first Mission Impossible movie went to theaters with sound effects out of sync. Is that right? You said you were able to fix it for the home release?
Oh, yeah.
But it went out, like many of the sound effects were out of sync on Mission Impossible. And by the time they realized it, the theatrical version had already shipped.
Right.
So when we saw it in theaters, there were sound effects that were out of sync.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But sync is for sissies now, you know. Nobody cares about sync. On streaming, you know, half the time I'm seeing stuff that's 2 frames late or 2 frames early, or, you know. So they don't seem to be able to get a grip on sync somehow.
Did you get your movie in sync?
Yes. Well,
Charles just made a movie for Blumhouse too, just like Gina.
Great.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yes, Paul's daughter Gina just edited
Sweetheart, which is one of my favorite movies of the year, I think.
Yeah.
You should hire Gina for your next movie.
You should.
Okay. What was I going to say?
She's a great collaborator.
Yeah, I bet. So, it's awesome that she's been around, you know, learned under you and everything for so many years.
What happened to her acting career?
She wised up.
I love that I think there's really something, I think it's maybe in the introduction you talk about editors, because I think that the coolest thing about movies, to me, one of the coolest things about it is that it's a combination of all the art forms.
Yeah.
And the thing that you pointed out that I'd never thought of before, which is really cool, is that the editor position is the only one that was not derived from any other art form.
Right.
And that's what separates
Yeah.
film from all the others, and
it's
really
own...
fascinating to think about that every other position kind of came from somewhere else, but editor is the new thing that film had to create.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah, it's true if you think about it.
Yeah, you're an artist. That's what I'm trying to say.
I would call myself an interpretive artist as opposed to creative artist. My father was a painter, and he would say that, you know, facing a blank canvas is an experience that, you know, was always a big deal for him, you know, to come up with a new idea for an image. Whereas a violinist doesn't write the music, but he can be a great artist anyway and interpret the music that somebody else has written. And same thing with a choreographer, listens to music and interprets how the music makes him feel or her feel, and designs the dance to that music. And so I think editing is in that category where I look at the dailies and I think, well, how do I get the best out of this, you know? So it's an interpretive art form, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it's not like writing, the writer facing a blank page and figuring out what he's going to write, you know, or a blank canvas. It's a different, or blank sheet of music, you know.
Right.
Composers, writers, artists. It's a different category from dancers, instrumentalists, editors.
Well, there is an amazing surprise, I think, in this book, which I had never heard before, which is that you really were instrumental in the sort of emotional climax of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I know you're going to go watch it again tonight, but...
Oh my God, that story is so
I
great.
had no idea. I mean, watching that movie, you have no idea that this was something that was invented so last minute, not in the script, all of that. Can we talk about I'm talking about the moment where Steve Martin is on the train at the end. He's thinking about John Candy. He's putting the pieces together about what has gone on in his life. And
that was total last minute grasping at straws invention, trying to figure out how to make the end work. Because originally they part ways on the platform of the L, and they've gotten to the end of the trip. Candy says goodbye. Steve gets on the train. He goes out to the suburbs. He walks into the little suburban train station and trips over Dell's trunk once more. And he looks up, and Dell is sitting there. He says, "Dell, what are you doing here?" He says, "I got one of the truck drivers to give me a lift, you know." He says, "No, but what are you doing here, you know?" He says, "Well, you know," I forget what the answer was, but he says, "Well, well, why don't you go home? He says, I can't go home. He says, why not? Why can't you go home? And he says, I don't have a home. And then there was a long speech where he described how Marie had died 8 years ago, and ever since then he couldn't stand to be around the house, so he just took off and he travels around and he attaches himself to people, and sometimes he goes to church just to feel the presence of other people, and during the holidays it's particularly hard, so he attaches himself to people. And Neil, you're a great guy, you're one of the greatest people, and Candy's giving this speech and the audience starts to laugh, and it was not a good laugh. It was a bad laugh. And we thought, oh my God, this is not working at all. So what do we do? So eventually we worked out this idea of, instead of Candy throwing himself in front of Steve at the end and begging to be taken home, we played it as if the suburban train station was the train station in the city. So then we had this business on the train where we put in, cuts to things that Candy said that suggest that maybe he didn't have a place to go. And then we had a shot of the train leaving the station. We ran that backwards to show the train coming into the L station. Steve gets off the train, goes into the suburban station, which is now being played as the downtown station, which we've never seen.
Right.
And Candy is sitting there, and he hasn't hadn't gotten a truck driver to drive him to the suburbs to intercept Steve. So it made Candy more dignified, that he wasn't throwing himself and asking for pity.
Yeah.
And it made Steve a better character because it gave him some sensitivity and empathy for John's situation. He puzzled it out. So it was a win-win in that sense. And then he takes him home, and one of the guys who interviewed me in Chicago pointed out that there's a cut, I hadn't remembered this, there's a cut to in the foyer when he's meeting Steve's wife, where she had believed, this is another element of the story that we took out, she believed that Del was a made-up character, that Neil was telling her stories about this mythical Del, and he was actually screwing around and having running around with women the whole time, and she didn't really believe that he was a real person, and then she sees him for the first time, and he's standing there, and there's a cut, and he's I was marveling at the poster, which is the two men sitting next to each other, and Steve is wearing a gray suit and a fedora. Candy's wearing this big blue parka with red earmuffs and a sort of cap sort of perched on top of the earmuffs. And there's so much of the character expressed through the costume. It's so strong, and it's so much a reflection of the division that we're all living through today, which is the elite and the white collar and the blue collar. And so anyway, in this final scene, there's a cut to Candy holding his hat in his hands. There's a big close-up of his hands. And this interviewer told me that he found that cut very emotional, And I thought, it's true. And I went back and looked at it again, and I had forgotten it. And it was, literally he's there, hat in hand, Anyway, so we had other endings. We had many other endings. We had a whole dinner scene, the family assembled at the Thanksgiving table, and Steve is sitting at the head of the table, and water is running down the wall behind him. And he says, "Where's Del?" And somebody says, "Oh, he's upstairs taking a shower,"
Oh, man, that's great.
So, but we screened the picture 9 times in 1 month, and I remember seeing some cards, and on one of the cards it said, "I like the other ending better."
They'd come to other screenings.
They've been to so many screenings. They recruited the same people, He said, "I like the other ending better."
I love to be able to do that. Such an amazing creative solution to have the train coming back in reverse. And I never ever, I've seen the movie. I watch it every year. I'll watch it tomorrow on Thanksgiving with my wife. We watch it every year. Never noticed that the train leaves on the same track and arrives on the same track, which doesn't really, I don't know, does that...
Doesn't track.
That doesn't, yeah. But you just don't question it until it completely works and has this amazing emotional impact. Uh-huh. And you describe in the book, too, that originally the scene of Steve Martin putting it together on the train. He's driving away, he's leaving on the train.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about the trip.
Yeah.
In the final cut, as we see the movie now.
Yeah.
He's laughing to himself, and then suddenly he starts to realize something. But that wasn't shot with that intention.
Well, I don't know what Steve was thinking at the time, but it wasn't anything in the script that was written that he, it's just something he improvised.
That he was just doing.
He was just doing it.
Because you described watching dailies, all these dailies of this
2
footage.
hours.
You were just like, what is this?
Yeah, 2 hours.
And then did you just recall that when you were editing? And
2 hours of him sitting on the train.
What else was in that almost 4 hour cut that didn't make it in? And was it hard to pare that back without...
Oh, yeah.
Because I think...
The first motel scene was 40 minutes by itself.
The one where Steve Martin gives the big speech?
Yeah.
And then with it John Candy gives his speech.
Like the kid who steals the money was the pizza boy.
Okay.
They had ordered pizza. And you cut to the pizza boy and he's banging on the door, pizza! And you cut to Candy and he says, come in. And the kid tries the door and it's locked. He says, it's locked. He says, no, it's open. Come in. And, he tries it again and it's locked. He says, I'm telling you, man, it's locked. He says, put a little muscle into it. So finally it's, all right. And he goes to the door and he opens it. And you see the kid is knocking on the door of the room across the way. So there was that bit. And then he comes in and he says, just toss the pizza on the bed. And he actually throws the pizza on the bed. And he throws the 6-pack of beer onto the bed also. And the bed is a vibrating bed. So, it's sitting there shaking like this. So then he says, how much is that? And he says, $19. He says, here's 20, keep the change, put it toward your college fund. He says, that's $1. He says, I know. He says, well, that's like 5%, and there's a whole scene and the kid is resentful. And so that set up the coming back and stealing the money out of their wallets later.
Right.
So there was that whole scene with the pizza kid. That's gone. There's a scene where Steve is in the shower and he picks up the soap and there's like there's like matted hair on the soap.
Oh.
And he's holding the soap under the shower to try to wash the hair off the soap,
Yeah.
And there was that, and then he's in the shower and Candy comes in. He says, Del, I'm in here. He says, that's okay, you don't bother me. And then he looks right into the camera as if he's looking into the bathroom mirror, and he goes, starts making faces, checking. And then he cut away to Steve in the shower, and he cut back to Del, and he's got a hairbrush in his hand. He's got his hair like this, and he's going, and cut back to Del, and he's now got 60 yards of dental floss. He's pulling through his teeth like this. I mean, there was like just piece of business, and then Steve notices a hole in the wall of the shower, and he peeks through, and he sees into the next shower, and there's the stewardess from his flight, and she's saying, "Can you believe that flight? That was one of the worst." She says that I always get the worst people in my section. This one guy, that impotent jerk who was, and she's talking about Steve, and she's that guy sitting next to him, the sweet guy. He gave me a free set of shower curtain rings.
Oh my gosh!
Steve was watching this through the hole. It's like Anthony Perkins in Psycho. The light shining on his eye, and suddenly the stewardess notices this hole, and she looks, and then cut to Steve, and his finger comes through and sticks him right in the eye. So there was, and then they get into bed, and there was like a whole routine. There was one routine that never even made it into the first cut, where Candy says to him, he says, Steve, Neil, he says, yeah, he says, what, do you know anything about mining? He says, mining? What do you mean? He says, well, in the old days, the miners used to bring a canary in a bird cage down into the mine, He says, yeah. He says, so, in case there was, a gas leak, they would be able to know because the canary would die. He says, yeah. He says, well, imagine that we had a canary in bed with us. Petey, his name is Petey. Imagine Petey in a cage, and imagine that we had him here in bed with us. He says, yeah. He said, well, Petey just died. and Steve jumps up and throws the covers off, and so that never made it into the cut, but it was pretty funny.
It must be that's crazy. Talking about Kill Your Darlings, you have all these brilliant John Hughes gags that you have to lose in service, obviously, of the movie. It's I think like the Zaz team talk about that with Airplane. Also, I think their first cut of those movies is super long, and then they have to get it down to like 80-something minutes. Yeah, because it exhausts the audience to have too much comedy.
People get tired of laughing.
Yeah,
they can only laugh for so long. There was a scene at the airport when he gets to the airport, and they were racing. He races Kevin Bacon for the cab, and then it's Candy takes the cab he thought he had bought from the lawyer, and he gets to the airport, and there's a line to get through security, and he's waiting, and they keep making Candy go through the metal detector over and over and over again, and finally they figure out that he's got a metal shoehorn in the back of his shoe that he had forgotten about. So then the flight's canceled. They sit down. They're sitting there, and Candy offers. He says, "You stole my cab," and he says, "Oh, I am so sorry," And there's that great cut of Candy with the cab door.
It's in the airport
terminal.
Right? Yeah.
Just the door from the cab doing that surprised expression. It's really great. But we kept that. But anyway, there was a whole business about, can I get you anything, And Candy comes back with a chili dog in one hand. He lights a cigarette in the other. He takes a big drag on the cigarette and then bites into the chili dog, blowing smoke out his nostrils as he's biting into the chili dog. Which I thought was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But it was pointed out to me that when we took that shot out, the scores with the women went way up. So I guess it was too gross for the women in the audience. But there was a whole, long section in the airport. I mean, here's the thing. If you have bad material, it's easy to cut down. Yeah. But if it's all good, you have to think about it and say, well, anyway, it was challenging.
Do you ever feel like any of those scenes you wish you'd swapped back?
No.
Like there's you think you got all the right ones in there?
Well, judging from the audience seeing it the other night, I would say.
You went to a screening.
Yeah, I went to screening in Chicago, and the audience really roared.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think we got it right. Shorter is usually better.
There's an interesting. I think the tone is a little different in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Ferris Bueller, which obviously you cut both of them.
Yeah.
Like I feel like in Planes, Trains, it goes a little bit more like you're talking about the steam coming out of the nose, or like the gag you were describing in the book. There's a gag with the falsetto voice after he gets hit in the balls.
Yeah.
Like that, Planes, Trains is a little more heightened in its comedy. I think in that there's such a part we see the skeletons as they go through the truck, stuff like that. Ferris Bueller, I think, is more grounded. Was it always that grounded, or were there those kind of gags in Ferris Bueller that were cut out?
No, it was pretty much grounded. I mean, John's idea about Ferris was that he had done his first film, 16 Candles, meant to be the worst day in a teenager's life. Mm-hmm. Her family forgot her birthday, That was the worst day of her life. Ferris is meant to be the best day in a teenager's life. So it was always grounded in some reality, heightened by Ferris's outsized personality,
I was glad to find out that the steelworker was an actual guy dancing.
Yeah.
And another really interesting part is about your configuration of that parade sequence and its placement in the day, too.
Yeah.
Making it more climax, putting it later in the movie to make it more of a climax.
Yeah.
And I love that whole story, and I have to thank you. You talked about the shot that last time I watched Ferris Bueller, I rewound and watched it like 4 times in a row. That wide shot of the whole city street in Chicago is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
A lot of energy in that shot.
And you point out in the book, you're like, I held this shot for as long as I could. Just wanted you to know that it's very appreciated. That shot is one of the most amazing things. It's even if you remember, like all the way down the street, you see like everybody. It looks like everybody in the entire city is dancing
and then
like
all the
crazy
balloons,
to Twist and
balloons
Shout.
go up at the end.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
But that was another long cut. I mean, that was almost 3 hours long initially. So
2:45. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that was the longest cut I'd ever faced before.
Until Planes, Trains,
and Automobiles, and that was 3:45.
Do you remember what the big stuff was there that you kind of took out
in Ferris?
Yeah.
Well, there were other children in the family. There were younger children.
What?
Yes.
In the book, you talked about a lot of monologues were cut, but what were the other children?
Well, I had forgotten this, and somebody reminded me. There were scenes with younger siblings. We just eliminated them, and
how many other?
I think a boy and a girl.
Did Jennifer Grey have scenes with them too?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's interesting because her sort of journey feels very
1986, guys. I've seen a lot of dailies since then.
Well, your memory is pretty amazing. So
thank you. Not as amazing as that. There was a monologue at the beginning where Ferris describes a friend of his who cries himself to sleep at night because he's so miserable, and this is before he left the house to go over to see Cameron, and it just felt like it's taking too long to get the show on the road, so we took that out. And the guy who's talking about this friend of his who cries himself to sleep turns out to be the son of the family that Cindy Pickett, Mrs. Bueller, who's a real estate woman, is showing houses to. And that kid is Charlie Sheen that we meet in the police station at the end.
Wow.
So the Charlie Sheen stuff worked fine without any kind of setup. We didn't need any kind of setup for that. So we took that out. There was a scene in the Chicago River where they're on a tour boat and they're talking about nuclear winter. What comes after nuclear winter? And somebody says, nuclear spring?
Was there a sequence where they ate liver or something? Because there's
Sweetbreads.
Sweetbreads. Because there's a reference to it that's still in the movie.
Yeah, you ate Sweetbreads.
Yeah, and you don't actually see it in the movie.
Pancreas.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah,
pancreas.
We ate pancreas, or yeah. So why did that scene go?
Again, it was too long. Everything. There was a scene in the restaurant. The restaurant is named Shakey's, by the way. Shakey's.
Okay.
If you CHEZQUIS. Shakey's. It's supposed to be Shakey's. It's John's joke. It was shrinking stuff down.
I heard Ferris got more likable, or at least that's sort of the legend too, is that he became more likable as some of these monologues went away. Was that your assessment?
I don't remember.
Okay.
And it's amazing that because there's a part when they're picking up the car at the end.
Yeah.
And there's I think Alan Rock yells something in reference to something that you had to cut.
Yeah.
And then you did I've seen that movie hundreds of times probably since I was a kid, and I've never noticed a great ADR cheat that you did there where you changed the line so that he says, "I can't believe you," and then he makes it about they changed the line to be about the parade float, which is a scene that obviously is still in the movie. Yeah.
He said, "I can't believe you're on a radio show."
Right.
We changed it. "I can't believe you're on a parade float."
Yeah.
And it's a wide shot. You get away with this. No one would ever look to see if his lips are moving in sync.
Yeah.
There's so much bad ADR these days. Though.
Hey, I saw The Two Popes recently, and there's a scene where the Argentinian, I forget his name, Bergoglio, whatever, is supposed to be whistling, and his lips aren't pursed. And I'm thinking, excuse me, he's supposed to be whistling, and he's not doing this. He's just, and they lay in some whistling over his face.
That's terrible.
There's so much bad ADR.
It's a pet peeve of ours. We'll text each other whenever we see some bad ADR, because just there's like conversations will be held where it's just over someone's shoulder and they're talking, and then you go to the other side and you're over their shoulder, and then you're just the person, whoever's off camera is the one who's talking, and it's a whole conversation back and forth.
A lot of shots of people listening.
Yeah, like they fixed this scene in the edit.
Yeah, that's when you have a scene in trouble.
Yeah. we go. Paul Hirsch Part 2 in the books.
Part 2.
And in his book, what if in the second edition he talks about these lovable scamps that come out to his house every few months and grill him about nonsense?
Yeah. I would love that. We can only hope.
I don't think it's going to happen.
He's going to add a new chapter to the book. Second edition. The Light the Fuse idiots.
Somebody suggested a great title if we ever do a Last Jedi centered miniseries or spinoff called Ignite the Spark, which is what they have to ignite the spark of the rebellion once again.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just continuing with our naming convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we could do it about Transformers. Isn't that like the All-Spark or something?
The All-Spark. But do they say Ignite the Spark?
I don't know.
They probably just say... all those movies are just... Yeah, they're just noise.
That's the quote from the Light Our Darkest Hour. That's the whole thing.
Oh, is that?
In the 80s cartoon feature-length movie that I love. I grew up on that.
Yeah.
It's hardcore.
I know.
They kill Optimus Prime in the first act.
So who's the hero?
Hot Rod.
Ugh.
Well, it's kind of an ensemble.
Where's Bumblebee?
But Hot Rod emerges. Bumblebee's a part of it, too.
Okay.
He's a little bit sidelined, but he's part of it.
You know I love Bumblebee.
You know that, spoiler alert, by the end, Hot Rod becomes Rodimus Prime.
Ugh.
Really? He gets the Autobot Matrix, and I know way too much.
So that's kind of like the All-Spark.
I know way too much about this movie. I saw it so many times as a kid.
Do you love that the production company is All-Spark Films now?
For what?
For all the Transformers movies.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know I'm a fan of Transformers 3.
I know. I loved Bumblebee myself.
Oh, Bumblebee was good, yeah. 4 and 5 were not great. 5 had a couple of cool things. There was a flashback to Bumblebee fighting the Nazis. That was fun. And there was also a flashback at the very beginning. There's like a prologue with Merlin or something, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it like Stanley Tucci plays Merlin? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. 5 also has like an extra act where there's a planet coming out of the ground or something. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay.
It was exhausting.
Yes. But I was sort of into it.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, Transformers.
Anyway, Paul Hirsch did not work on any Transformers
No,
movies.
he did not. So you don't have to worry about that.
No, but we'll be back next week with more Paul Hirsch goodness.
Yes, next week is a lot of Brian De Palma talk, which is awesome hearing him talk about that.
Yeah.
He edited many Brian De Palma movies, which of course we love.
Yeah.
And I guess we should plug our Patreon as we always do.
Yeah, you got to sign up.
Sick of hearing us say it. Well, if you all signed up, we'd stop talking about it.
Can you gift someone a Patreon?
I don't know.
Maybe. Anyway,
maybe you can. That'd be good.
Yeah.
You can sign up at patreon.com/lightthefuse and get bonus content. You get our commentaries and bonus episodes and other stuff. And if you do a higher tier, you can do our monthly Skype chat where we talk to our Patreon followers there, and that's a really fun thing to do. We get to know you guys and hear what you want to know. You get the inside scoop on what we're working on, and
we're big fans of our Patreon subscribers. I mean, Jeremy Dillon, I feel like we genuinely love.
Yes.
He's in town next week, so we're gonna try to get dinner.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'll tell you that.
We never get him on the Skype chat, but we've sat down with him.
No, but he's like touring everywhere and hanging out with people and dressing fabulously.
Yes.
Yeah.
He really does.
Yeah.
It's intimidating.
I know.
I dress like a schmo. So if you can't sign up for the Patreon, then go to our TeePublic page, buy a shirt, buy a magnet, buy a laptop case, buy a whatever. Show your support for Light the Fuse. Buy a sticker. It's like a couple of bucks.
Yeah. And then wear that shirt out so Charles will know who you are. And then instead of going up to Charles will go up to you.
Yeah, there we go. Great.
What do you think?
That works.
Okay.
I'm down with that.
And at the very least, wherever you're listening to this, like, subscribe, rate, and review, and just tell people about it.
Yes,
just
please.
Get the word out.
Put out the word.
We are dying over here.
Put out the vibe.
Yeah. We need some recognition.
Yeah. Just so that we can have some positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
We don't get it from our dads.
Did we hit 1,000 on Twitter?
We're close. We have not
still close.
We're still close to 1,000 followers on Twitter.
Jeez.
Help us push us over the edge.
Yes. Do we have any credits we need to say?
Well, this episode is brought to you by Jeremy Dillon, and it was mixed and edited by Luke Burson.
Great. And we'll be back next week with the end of the trilogy, if you will.
Yes.
Paul Hirsch Part 3.
and I think have a happy New Year. I think we're at the end of the year.
Oh,
now.
great!
So
thank God.
2020 coming up.
We made it.
And next year, I think we're gonna have a lot of cool stuff. So
God, I hope so.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
You'll see. We're gonna be lighting the world on fire.
I hope so.
Yeah, we'll at least light the fuse.
Yeah, we will.
All right.
Consecutive. All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.